Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Charity Majors, and today we are going to be chatting about 3 tips to make social media easier. Now, as our community within Business and Bubbly, as we serve women in business, one of the biggest, I would say, roadblocks that come up for women, for entrepreneurs in general, is social media. And I don't know if you have been there too. You can kind of raise your virtual hand and say, oh, like social media has been a thing for me. And in this episode, like I said, we want to chat a little bit about 3 tips that will actually make it easier for you. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Charity Majors. I'm the founder of Business and Bubbly, and I love, love, love to create community and connection and to serve women in business. And we do this all over with our networking groups, with our communities, with our events. And we love to provide value for you guys here with our podcast and with our Instagram. So would love to hear you guys. If you're joining us on Instagram, let me know where you're tuning in from. If you are on the podcast with us, make sure that you send us a message on Instagram and say hi. But I want to go over these 3 tips because let's face it, I like to joke. I actually like to say that social media is this stupid game that we get to play. Right? It's a stupid game that we have somehow integrated into our world these days. And it is a way that for us as women in business that we connect, that we market, that we grow our businesses, that we share value. And if you think about it, like even 30 years ago, 20 years ago, this wasn't even a thing, right? It like wasn't even in existence. And so somehow we have gone from non-existing to taking over the world with this stupid game that we all get to play. And if you have a business, which if you're watching this or listening to this, you probably have a business. It again is just one of those stupid games that we get to play. And so my hope and my intention with this episode is to actually help you reframe how quote unquote hard social media can be. Because in my experience, where the hard comes from is actually more in the stories that we tell ourselves compared to the actual pushing of the buttons and posting something. Okay. So when it comes to social media, my first tip is to actually, what I just said, is to actually reframe your understanding and your thinking about what social media is. Pushing some buttons is not hard. What actually is hard is the story that we tell ourselves about it. Okay. And this can be multi-layered. This can be faceted, especially for us as women, especially if you are on a healing journey and a personal growth journey where you have maybe worked on yourself some, or maybe you're just starting that journey and you're not quite aware that, oh, there's some triggers and there's some like stories from my past that I'm telling myself that aren't necessarily serving me anymore. And so what's not hard is the pushing of the buttons and posting a picture. What's hard is actually the story that we tell ourselves around it. Okay. And sometimes it can be the story it doesn't always have to be like this big trauma thing from our childhood or from our past. Sometimes it can actually be the little stories that prevent us from posting. So I'm going to give you an example. When Facebook Live first came out and it was a thing, this like years and years ago, I remember I was at the gym and I was listening to a couple great podcasts and I got this like hit of inspiration and I wanted to like share it and I was going to do a Facebook Live. And it wasn't like this major thought or limiting belief that came into my head about doing a Facebook Live, like, oh my gosh, like they're going to reject you and you're going to die, which if you break down all of our limiting beliefs, everything actually roots back to the fear of rejection and the fear of death. Okay. So that's another story for another day. But the lie, the limiting belief that I heard in my head from my ego was actually, oh, you just got back from the gym. You probably smell a little bit. Why don't you just wait until you're showered and you're more camera ready and that they're not going to smell you. You guys, this was Facebook Live, like Instagram Live, like a podcast, like nobody can smell me. And truth be told, I went to the gym before this, had a call, changed my shirt, and I'm here. And you can't smell me, and it's fine. So I have not showered. I'm not like perfect camera ready. Done is better than perfect. But here's the thing is it's not always these big major limiting beliefs that hold us back from showing up in a new way or from doing something on social media. It actually can be a lot of those smaller lies, those smaller limiting beliefs, like the crock of crap that I told myself that people were going to smell me if I did my Facebook Live. Okay. And again, that gets layered down into the fear of rejection that people aren't going to like, they're not going to like what I have to say. Who am I to say this or to do that? Or who does she think she is? Like all of this different stuff that can hold us back from showing up in a much bigger way. So again, the hard part isn't pushing the buttons and posting a picture on social media. It actually is the story that we tell ourselves about it. Now, this can also get into, I don't know about you, but I've for sure have like been in, like played the merry-go-round of, oh, well, it's not the perfect time to post, or, oh, this isn't like super amazing, or I have to like spend all this time and energy and effort creating all of this viral, spectacular content. And if we're actually really honest with ourselves, that is not what the majority of social media is. Okay. Well, I remember when I stopped playing this is the perfect time to post game, and I actually posted when it like began to show up on social media when it was convenient for me and when I could just do it consistently. It actually, like, I got to take my power back from that expectation of the perfection of having to show up at 8 a.m. and then at 12 o'clock and then at 6 p.m. and then again at 8 a.m. at 8 p.m. It was like I got to let myself off of the hook from showing up from all of these external expectations. And I got to show up when it actually was convenient for me, which as a mom, that isn't always camera ready. And as a mom, that isn't always at the exact perfect time to post, according to the whoever, whatever expert on the whatever expert social media blog. Sometimes it's 3 o'clock, and sometimes I'm breastfeeding at 2 a.m. and that's when I post. And sometimes it's at, God forbid, it's at 10 a.m. when nobody is on, or God forbid, it's at 10 o'clock at night when everyone is going to bed. It's like, who cares? That's when I can post, or that's when I can show up and share something of value. And so that's what's going to work for me, regardless of the expectation of the timing. And so again, it's about the story that we tell ourselves, because posting, like pushing some buttons, writing, even if it's like, I hope that you have an amazing day today, post. Not hard. What is hard is the story that we tell ourselves around it. So I want to challenge you today that if you're telling yourself a story that social media is hard, that posting something is hard, that coming up with all this content is hard, it's not. It's the story that you're telling yourself about it. And what actually gets you unstuck, what actually gets you to grow in confidence is to do it anyway. Done is better than perfect. Getting into action gets you out of overwhelm. And so it's pushing the buttons to where you can actually figure it out, and it's going to be messy and it's not going to be perfect. And you'll probably want to delete it. And who freaking cares? Do it anyways. It's social media. It's a stupid game that you get to play. Let yourself off the hook of these high expectations of everything that you do has to be perfect and viral and keep up with the Joneses and the whoever, whatever influencers online, and put your stuff out there. You will get better and better by the reps that you put in compared to the perfectionism that you have going on in your head. Okay. Done is better than perfect, and put in the reps. It will get easier and easier, and you'll begin to find your voice. You'll begin to find your flow. You'll begin to show up in a much bigger way, but that doesn't come without doing the reps. That doesn't come without pushing the buttons. That doesn't come without getting over the story and the hardness, the quote unquote hardness and the stuckness that you have in your head, and actually just doing the thing. Action cures overwhelm every time. So get into action and change the story around your social media. Okay, that's tip number one. Tip number two, this is where, now I remember when social media, when it was like first coming out, and it was like this, like you had to like like there wasn't necessarily like all of these things that you could do to create posts easily, like Canva, and there wasn't all of these social media scheduling platforms and all of this different stuff. And so you had to just like do it right then in real time. And something that has actually made social media a lot easier for me is actually batch content creation. So I will sit down and I have like Google Sheets and I have Canva, and I'll write out captions and I will batch content and create things in Canva. And then I also in my phone have folders that are labeled according to the different businesses or different events or different things that I have. So I've got like a family folder, I have an events folder, I have stuff for Business and Bubbly, I have stuff for ministry, I have stuff for quotes, I have stuff for video and for reels. And so when I want to plug and play and grab something on the go, I'm able to go to my Google Drive, grab a caption that I've already written, go to my folder that's in my phone, and I just get to plug and play and post it right then and there. Because if we're honest, like we don't always show up fully and with high energy. We don't always show, it's not always convenient, especially for us as moms, or we're busy in business and whatever it is. We're at baseball games and, when we're breastfeeding, apparently there's a lot of bees in my examples right now. It's not always convenient to like take 10 minutes or 20 minutes to like think of a post, and I got to get this, this inspiration and this whatever. And most of the time we don't really feel like it. But if we have been able to set aside some time, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and batch create content. What I love to do is actually get into a place of inspiration where inspiration is flowing. I've like gotten a good workout. I've like listened to a good podcast. And all of a sudden I'm going to sit down and I'm going to create some content because I am fired up. And so I actually harness that fired up, inspired energy where I'm like going for it with what I'm saying. And my copywriting is like really good. And like, I'm able to harness that high vibe energy. I'm able to harness that inspiration within that batched content that I have done within that hour or two. And then that gets to go in a bank that I can pull from any time. And whether my baby is asleep or awake, I can pull from that content. And again, then here's the thing. Now all of a sudden I have this banked content. I have images in my phone and I have images in my Google Drive. I grab it and I plug and play, right? I plug it right into my Instagram. I plug it right into my Facebook. I plug it right into LinkedIn or wherever it's going. And I have told myself a different story again from tip number 1, that it's not hard. It's not hard, right? And this is a part of the stupid game that we get to play. All right. So tip number 1, again, we have to tell ourselves a different story about social media being hard and actually get into action, because action cures overwhelm, and done is better than perfect. Okay. Number 2 is to batch create. Batch create, batch create, batch create content, whether that is your images, whether that is your copywriting. Batch create, because then you are able to go in and harness that inspired energy that you have had in the past, maybe on your low days, on your crappy days, on your mom days, and you're still able to put out that fire post or to put out that be real content that you have batch created and batch recorded in the past. And now it's in a folder in your phone and you can just boop, pop it in there. And now it's not that difficult. Okay. And number 3 is to put in the reps. I know I talked a little bit about this in tip number 1, like that done is better than perfect, and to tell yourself a different story. But there's power in putting in the reps. A lot of times people get stuck in the action, in actually doing the action. They get stuck in their head and they don't put in the reps. Now, what does it look like to put in the reps? I remember when I was an athlete, I was a collegiate athlete. I went over to Europe to play professionally, and to get to that level, I had to put in the reps and I had to be consistent, and I had to do it for a long time. I had to do it for years and years and years. So you have to understand that when you are putting in the reps in the beginning of starting your business, your posts are probably going to suck. And that's okay. And your branding is probably going to suck. And that's okay. But guess what? It is actually going to evolve and get better over time. The more that you put in the reps, the more that you're going to find the power that in the potency of your voice. Because here's actually another side note. I don't believe that you need to find your voice. You already have a voice. You just need to be empowered to use it and to find the potency of it. And so when you find the potency of your voice, when you find that magnetic message, that thing that comes from your guts and from your heart, and where you can talk about with conviction, it might ruffle some feathers and you just get over it anyways, because if you're not offending somebody, then you're actually not doing anything worth people paying for. I love you, but I'm not sorry that I said that. You need to actually find the potency of your voice and the potency of your message and the magnetism. You have to stop saying things that are the same as everybody else to be able to stand out. And that comes from doing the reps. And that comes from doing the reps. That comes from doing the reps. So for me, when I wanted to be one of the best volleyball players on my high school team to then get recruited by college and then be one of the best volleyball players on my college team to then potentially go play in Europe, and to play professionally, I had to put in the reps. I had to go to the gym and lift heavy weights. I had to get jump trainers, and my calves hurt all the time. My legs were sore all the time. I was in the gym all the time. I was hitting the ball up against my garage door. I was passing the ball, all the time up against the side of the gym. I'm setting the ball all the time. I'm playing in games. I'm in practice. I'm giving it my all. I'm blood, sweat, tears, the floor burns from diving after the ball, putting in the reps to be able to rise to the top. And I think that in today's instant gratification world, this is actually a skill that people are forgetting about. And it's actually a skill, like to put in the reps is what's actually is going to move you from the beginner, not very good, to the average, blending in with everybody else, to now actually standing out and rising above the rest. And putting in the reps are going to be one of the things that will help you move from the middle of the pack to taking the lead. Because a lot of times people, they actually give up and they actually pivot and they actually change their messaging and they change their offer and they whatever it is after doing it twice and nobody buying it, and they give up. But here's the thing. Giving up and not being consistent, not putting in the reps is the quickest way that will keep you at the bottom, and that will keep you frustrated, that will keep you in overwhelm, that will keep you not standing out. So my friend, you've got to first, again, you got to tell yourself a different story around social media, because pushing the buttons and posting a picture or posting a video is not hard. The story that you're telling yourself around that is. So again, done is better than perfect, and action is the quickest thing that will get you out of overwhelm. So push the buttons and do the post. Okay. And we got to do the reps. And we have to be able to do things that are going to get us to stand out from the crowd. And that's putting in the reps. I didn't become one of the best volleyball players with an award-winning volleyball player, but one of the best in the nation with records still at my school, by not practicing and by not getting messy and blood, sweat, and tears. And it's the same in business. It's the same in social media. So you've got to put in the reps and you've got to stay consistent enough for you to be able to get past the learning curve to where you become known for something, where you begin to stand out in the crowd because other people have trickled off, where you have put in the grit and put in the time and consistency to actually be good at something. Because here's the thing, when it comes to our gifts, when it comes to our talents, okay, gifts are things that we have naturally been given by our creator, that we are naturally inclined and bent towards. Okay. Now, our talents are the things that we pick up along the way, the skills that we pick up along the way. And to actually get good at talents, you've got to obviously practice at them, and you have to put in the reps. But here's the thing is, when you take something, one of your gifts, one of your talents that maybe you're like, a lot of times people, they try and get better at something that they are horrible at and that they hate and that sucks the life out of them. Okay. So if you're like talking about your gifts and your talents, it's something that you are not gifted in. And this is like a 1 or a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. And when it comes to development, we can typically only develop something 2, 3, maybe 4 points of an increase in development. So if you're taking that skill that's like a 1 or a 2 for you, and you're trying to like put all this energy and effort and whatever and develop it, and you're trying, like, at best, you're going to be like a 4 or 5, at best, you're going to be average, like that's a waste of time. But if you take something that you are naturally good at, you take your 5 or your 6 that naturally you're already like pretty average, you're already a little bit better than average naturally, and you put time and energy and effort into that. And all of a sudden you take that 5 or 6 and you're an 8 or a 9, or you're a 9 or a 10. And here's the thing is that people, they don't stand in lines for 4s and 5s. They might stand in lines for 6s, but people stand in lines and they gather and they buy and they want 8s, 9s, and 10s. And so this is where you have to develop the gift that you have. And that is like finding your message and finding your voice and showing up fully instead of staying back and staying in fear. So show up in the gifts that you have, develop the gifts that you have, get clear on the message that you have, because I know you have a message. Like, you're not in business because you don't have a message. You're not in business for nothing. Like, you want to make an impact. You have something that helps people. You have some lessons that you have learned along the way. And so when you can develop those things that you have gone through, those things that you are naturally good at, when you can spend the time and the reps and put in the reps to develop those things, it's going to get, all of a sudden it's a 7, and then all of a sudden it's an 8, and all of a sudden you're rising above the rest of the average people, and then it's a 9, and then it's a 10, and people stand in lines for 9s and 10s. Okay. So don't give up. Done is better than perfect. Action cures overwhelm every single time. Batch create your content so that you can harness that inspiration at those times where you are inspired, and put in the reps. All right, my friend, if this resonates with you, I would love to shoot us a message here on Instagram. If you needed this little kick in the butt, like, I love you, but I'm also going to like kick you in the butt sometimes. And it's a good loving kick, but I'm going to call you up and out. And that's what we're about. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you feel like someone needs to hear this, share it out with them, and make sure that you head over to our podcast, leave some positive reviews. That is one of the ways that this gets out, so we can continue to bring on not only incredible guests, but incredible just resources and content, and continue to serve you at an even better level. All right, my friend, have an amazing day. And as always, cheers to your success. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope it brought some value and some fun into your business and life. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and even share the episode with a fellow business bestie who you know will love it. It helps us continue to attract top-level guests and reach more and more women who are on their journey in business just like you. Remember that when money gets in the hands of good women, great things happen. Cheers to your success.